I am Dr. Kanwal Khalid. The usual concept on the social media and the rest of the mediums is that all the previous rulers were extremely incompetent and they had nothing to do except to enjoy the life, and that's it. This is a huge misconception which is associated to literally many rulers of the world, but specifically to the South Asian rulers and within South Asia, the Muslim rulers. And they are declared as the laziest kind of people in the world. But this is not the case. And one wonderful example that I come across is Humayun, the Mughal king Humayun. Interestingly, Humayun has not been much talked about ruler in the subcontinent. Overall, the rule has been portrayed as of incompetence and as of lots of misbehaves and the misconcepts associated to it. And this was an era that has not been associated with the competence of the king. But when I look at the history, I find it completely opposite because this is the king who faced so many problems, but he overcame all the challenges and he lost his empire one time and then he came back to reconquer it. So, this shows the resilience and the willpower of that particular man who was born in Kabul on 6th March 1508 and he ruled the subcontinent from 1530 to 1540 after the death of his father, that is Babur. But Babur died quite early and he was not able to establish the Mughal Empire in the subcontinent. And the Afghans and the Rajputs, they were not happy with this supremacy of Mughal. So after his death, obviously the rebellion was there and Humayun had to face them immediately. But Humayun would have been able to control all these powers if only his brothers were with him. By the way, Humayun is the only Mughal king who spared his brothers, and there were three of them: Kamran, Askari, and Hind. And Babur, before his death, asked Humayun to be gentle towards his brothers, and this is what he did. But all three of them conspirated against him, and the rebellions that he faced from within the family made them so weak that Shesha Suri he consolidated his power in Bihar and Bengal, and then in 1539 and 1540, he defeated Humayun in many battlefields and expelled him. That would eventually made him leave India for the next 10 years. Now, the interesting part is this that Humayun would have been able to tackle Shesha Suri if only his brothers were with him, but they have been, kind of betraying him continuously at so many battlefields. And as a result to that, Humayun became a homeless wanderer for the next not only 10 but almost 15 years. And within that time period, first he went to Sindh, then Marwar, and then Sindh again, and then his famous son Akbar was born during those wandering years in 1542. And Humayun mentioned that how when his wife Hamida Banu Begum was pregnant with his son Akbar, and they almost had nothing to eat, and they were in the desert in the hottest times of the year, and they had a huge issue with drinking water. At one point, Humayun's wife, Hamida Begum's horse died, so Humayun had to give his horse to her, and he traveled on the camel. And these were the days when he had very limited number of supporters with him, and they had to eat the meat of the dead horses because this was one of the lowest points of Humayun in his life. And then they went to Safavid Empire, and Shah Tahmasp he gave them asylum and he stayed there. During his long stay in Iranian court, Humayun did not waste his time, and he was, studying the art and architecture of Iran, which was one of the richest at that time. And if you just look at him, this is a king who has been exiled from his own country. He has lost his throne. And he could not see any hope there. And back home, his brothers are literally has a thirst for his blood. But even in those tough times, he was studying art and miniature painting, and he so much so that he requested many of the artisans in Iran that if he ever goes back to the subcontinent, he will invite them to his court. And later on, he did the same thing. Two of the pupils of the famous painter Behzad, Mir Sayyid Ali and Abdus Samad, they joined Mughal court in later years, but I'll talk about that when I'll give a history of miniature paintings in the subcontinent. So Humayun got a military aid of 1200 elite cavalry from Shah Temazib. He came back and he conquered Kandahar in 1545 and seized Kabul three times from his disloyal brother, that is Kamran Mirza. And in 1555, he recovered Delhi. And but a very interesting point here is this, that when Humayun came to this land, he conquered Lahore also. He won this back. In the meanwhile, Shesha Suri had died and his descendants were having lots of fights with each other. As a result to that, on 23rd July 1555, Humayun sat back on the throne of Delhi. Now, in political history, this is a complete miracle that a king who has lost his kingdom, he comes back and he wins it back. That shows the resilience and the willpower of this man who has not been given much of the credit in the history. Humayun again wanted to pardon his brothers, especially Mirza Kamran, but his courtiers were so against it, and Kamran was blinded and he was sent to Mecca in 1557, but he died in the same year, somewhere near Mecca. So Humayun, when he got his throne back, we come across so many references of his very interesting ventures that he used to do previously and he resumed doing that. One was his keen interest in arts, and the other one was his keen interest in astronomy. Yes, he was a great scholar of astronomy and he used to study the hemispherical beings a lot. And he had done lots of innovative methods were introduced in his court, and so much so that he had divided the days according to the stars and divided the colors according to the stars. Now, the division of such kind is in previous centuries it was declared as like the some kind of superstitions, but now science has proved that all these things matter a lot in our lives. I will talk about the contribution that were made by Humayun towards astronomy, but here I will narrate the story of his death. And that was also associated to his love for astronomy. That one fine evening, he was at the tower of his fort and he was studying the planet Venus. But then there was the call for prayer of Maghrib, and he came down. And when he was coming down, he was holding some books in his arm. And he stumbled on the stairs, and his head was hit in one of the corners of the stones of the stairs, and he was fatally wounded. That happened on 24th January 1556, and after 3 days he died on the 27th January 1556. Now, this was the king who literally gave his life for the passion that he had for the astronomy. And interestingly, he had many things added to this art and science which was associated with the ancient civilizations. And one interesting contribution that he had, that was the astrolabes. Yes, astrolabes were an extremely important instrument that was used by the previous generations. What was the astrolabe and what kind of contribution Humayun had towards the astronomy, and what were the mannerism that was adopted by him in his court, that was directly related to the colors, to the stars, and to the movement of the planets. I will talk about that in my next program.